Dobar dan, ne menjajte kanal, na pravom ste mestu. Ja sam Marija Kordić, moj današnji gost je bivši savjetnik Donalda Trampa, Džordž Papadopoulos. Mr. Papadopoulos, welcome to Informer television in Serbia. Thank you for coming. Now, your life has been much more like a movie script than a real life. You were, amongst other things, you were also Trump's advisor. How would you introduce yourself?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me, and it's wonderful to be in Serbia. I was born in Chicago, which has a very big Serbian population.
So you know Serbs well.
So I feel that I know Serbians very well, and it's my first time here, and I'm very happy to be here. Yes, I was an advisor to Donald Trump, and my life and the situation that he and I faced was like a movie script. Engaging with various spies, almost like a 007 James Bond situation that took America and the world by storm. We were able to fight back against the deep state and corruption and the weaponization of the intelligence agencies against Donald Trump. And now we are looking forward to Donald Trump re-entering the White House, hopefully in 2024.
Let me just go back for a second on your life story about how you become a victim of a deep state. You wrote actually a book that's called Deep State Target. Why were you a target of the deep state? You were accused of being a Russian spy. You were actually a main star of so-called Russian Gate, of making connections between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
So my career, actually, I worked in a very conservative think tank in Washington called the Hudson Institute. At this institute, most of my colleagues were officials that worked with George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush. And in 2015, after I worked in this institute for years, I looked at the candidates and I said, America needs a change. And I looked at Ben Carson, who I advised first, who then became an ally of Donald Trump. Then I advised Donald Trump. And the moment that I joined Donald Trump's campaign, it was because of Donald Trump's messaging of how he wanted to change the world and to bring peace and stability instead of endless wars. He wanted to renegotiate trade agreements that were destroying the American industry and bring jobs back to America from foreign lands. Now, this went completely against what the mainstream orthodoxy or thinking process of the Republicans and Democrats was. And the worst...
And of the deep state, of course.
And the deep states...
It would put it out of power.
Absolutely. And the threat of the deep state was when Donald Trump said, I want peace with Vladimir Putin. Mm-hmm. When he said this, that is when government agencies, MI6, CIA, even the FBI, decided to fabricate Russian collusion to spy on Donald Trump and to try and destroy his administration, and it failed because it was all a lie.
It's strange that you said it was not actually a solo CIA action adventure. It was a joint venture of different security agencies, MI6, am I right? MI6 and Australia also, and are those the members of the deep state? Who are actually those people?
So there's an agreement called the Five Eyes Intelligence Agreement mm-hmm. between the United States, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and Australia. And these 5 countries could basically, if they want, spy on each other's citizens legally. And obviously what we have seen now in the war in Ukraine, you have the British actually leading the Americans in this conflict to prevent any peace between Ukraine and Russia. We've seen this over the past year with Boris Johnson's visit to Kyiv to meet with Zelensky and to tell him do not sign an agreement with Putin. So
MI6 is actually spying on American citizens also and American politicians, including Trump. Can you imagine then what are they doing to other states which are not the allies with?
Let's look at just one very important fact. Christopher Steele is an MI6 operative. He wrote a dossier that was used to get a warrant to spy against Donald Trump in the United States courts. This is an individual who is an MI6 operative who interfered, of course, in my estimation, with the British government's understanding against a president. This is overt. Now, the other issues that we discussed, including what happened to myself with the Australians and others, this is some other information that came out after 5 years of investigation. So if it happened to Donald Trump, of course it's happening to other countries and other people.
But what we are seeing now in USA, these indictments against Donald Trump that keep piling up and piling up, is it still the same metrics? Is it still a war of deep state against Trump, preventing them to be re-elected, or what is this?
I've always said that it was never solely about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is one man. It's the idea of populism and nationalism that these individuals fear. And the reason...
And why? Why do they fear it?
Because it goes against the globalist agenda. And in my opinion, as somebody who worked for Trump in 2016, and I saw how foreign governments interacted, when Trump was for Brexit, for example, he was the only candidate who said the EU and England should separate. The British establishment did not want that. They wanted to remain in the European Union. So that is why I believe the British, along with the Putin issue, attacked Trump. Now, because Trump decided that he wants to revamp the FBI, to investigate Joe Biden, to stop war in Ukraine, this goes completely against the interests of the military-industrial complex, the lobby groups who want China to basically have a uphand on the United States economy, and this is why they're going after Donald Trump now. It's failing. His approval is going up the more he's being harassed. He's raising money, and they don't know what to do with him now. And that's why you had people like Tucker Carlson, who's a very famous, prominent journalist, saying the only next step potentially is assassinating him.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Do you find it to be realistic?
I never expected that what has happened the last 5 years in America was even possible. So at this point, nothing is impossible. I don't think that they will go to the extent to actually assassinate him, but what they would like to do is assassinate his character. And that's what these legal issues are doing. They're making it seem that he is a corrupt individual. He's associated to corrupt individuals. And that is really what they're trying to do, and to put him in prison. So,
how is Donald Trump in person? Is he rough and rash as he seems on television, or is he kind? I can't imagine him to be kind, honestly.
Donald Trump is a listener, first and foremost. What they portray him on TV is to be an unpredictable person who listens to no one. Donald Trump became a billionaire, a successful businessman, and the President of the United States, not because he's reckless or unpredictable, because he's very smart. He knows when to talk and when to listen. He knows what he knows what he does not know. And that's why he did put together such an incredible team around him to have the successes that he did during his first administration around the world and domestically. And this all happened, of course, before COVID came from China and created all of the dysfunction that we saw around the world.
How is he treating his cooperates, his associates? Is he strict, as we saw it in a TV show, Apprentice, was it, or something like that? Or is he more soft?
No, he expects the best. This is not a person, like I said, who got where he is by being soft or by having amateurs around him. He expects excellence. It's how he's run his corporation. It's how he ran his first term. And he will be a kind person in his heart for the American people. But when it comes to providing results, he needs tough people, tough negotiators. And that's why he's had excellent team around him during his first term.
But you were very young when you joined his team. Now he is actually a 70-year-old man. Did he trusted you when he saw you with this baby face? You know what I'm asking?
No, of course, and many people asked that, but I was very fortunate that I had a lot of recommendations from people in Washington, and then I advised a different candidate first, Ben Carson, and he said, you must bring in Papadopoulos. And it's really about trust and having a small group of people that you trust and bringing on team members. And I think that's why he was very successful, because his team was very small. He could trust them, and he didn't have too many outside forces except the FBI, the MI6, and these deep state characters.
Did you have, what was actually your role in the campaign? Did you have like day-to-day meetings with him, or what was your job?
So my background is in energy. Before I worked with Trump and others, I was dealing with US energy companies in Israel, in Cyprus, Greece, Egypt, and transforming the Mediterranean into a new energy source for both Europe and Asia. So that's how I got involved, actually. And I was advising on foreign policy and energy policy. And my biggest success, if you want to call it that, was actually brokering the first meeting Donald Trump had with a foreign leader, the president of Egypt, El-Sisi. And I think that really helped build this momentum that Trump had with success in foreign policy in the Middle East, of course, with Abraham Accord agreements, and virtually in every other arena too, with having stability and peace.
I want to ask you one more question regarding Trump. You were a member of the other team that later joined Trump. How did you get a job? I don't think it's going to, like, I'm going to pick up the phone and call, well, I would like to be a Trump's advisor.
No.
Did you have the interview for the job?
You have an interview, but it's mostly recommendations. It's people that trust you, who know who you are in Washington, who know Trump, and say, this is somebody you should hire. And I believe that's probably how he hired his other advisors as well, who were not many. But as the people in Serbia know, Rick Grenell, he was a very close advisor as well of President Trump, who had the faith of the president, and he had tremendous success, unlike other mediators or administrations, even here in Serbia. And it's something that I think, should Trump win again, he will likely continue that momentum, even here in Serbia, to bring some development, peace, and even more stability in the Balkans as well.
What do you think? Is he going to win?
If you ask me as a personal, as an American person who works in politics on television and follow this, I think he will win.
Why?
Because the American people, what happened in 2016 was something that shocked the world. People were not prepared for the corruption. Now the corruption has become so obvious that even if a president, former president, is arrested, his popularity goes up. If this happened in 2016, he would disappear. And I think because the American people believe that if the deep states can arrest a president, that they could go after them, they feel that he is their protector. And this is really one of the most important issues today in America, is the attack and the war against this deep state, this permanent bureaucracy, the FBI, and that's why I believe his policy numbers are going up.
And now we're seeing all across the United States these movements, Hispanics for Trump, niggers for Trump, as they call themselves. Since now, until now actually, Trump was a red collar, white guy leader. How come that he is now the favorite of the minorities in US?
I think, one, there's a misunderstanding about Trump, actually. Trump actually wanted to unite America. His messaging was all about America first. America is a country of immigrants of every religion, skin color, ethnicity, background. And when he said we're going to make America great again, he wasn't saying America great again for 50% of the population, but of the whole population. And the reason I believe that minorities now want him even more than his first term is because they saw results. The people want results. They saw that African Americans, Latino Americans, women, other minorities all had more money in their pockets, a better job, and they felt safer. And now, when Donald Trump is running again, they say Biden is bringing destruction around the world and in the economy. Let's bet on Donald Trump again, have a better life for our family, whether we're black, brown, white, Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, and that's the point.
My notion is that actually what attracts them to Trump is the sanity. I mean, the whole America has gone completely crazy with this wokeness culture and transgender propaganda, etc. Is the Trump now a symbol of sanity, literally sanity?
That's actually a very important question you ask, because American mothers and fathers and parents and religious figures, let's say, which make up, of course, a massive voting bloc, are afraid for the children. They're afraid for the future generations, which are being raised and being indoctrinated with foreign ideologies that don't have anything to do with Western values, Christian values, democracy. And Donald Trump is against the woke movement. He wants to bring traditional values back to America. He talks about God constantly, about bringing rights to the parents to control how their children are brought up, not
about family.
About family. And this, I think, also resonates with all Americans. And I think there's a pushback now because the woke movement has become too extreme.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that regarding this woke movement and the politics that's against it, like European politics, you have mentioned few leaders, that Americans are now viewing them as heroes.
Yes, there's a very interesting shift in America now. Mm-hmm. Before, America used to be a model of values, the economy, business, industry, Hollywood, in Europe and around the world. Now, when you see people like Giorgia Meloni, the new leader of Italy, Vučić here in Serbia, Orban in Hungary, and some other leaders around the world that espouse democracy, values, family values, religion, and traditional values, Americans are looking up to those people now and saying, what has happened to America? Why don't we emulate those countries in terms of values instead of the alternative? So that's something that's become very interesting ever since people like Tucker Carlson have put a spotlight on these leaders as well.
Mm-hmm. But what is actually happening to America? Where is the root of that wokeness culture? And what is the purpose of the wokeness culture? Is it to ruin the identity, the family? And where is the money in all that story? I can't understand the motive.
I believe that the woke movement in America is designed to replace authorization or values of the family with the state. Mm-hmm. And we've seen this in various other situations, especially in communist systems, socialist systems, where the government becomes the protector of the children, of families. In this case, the woke movement is being funded by the government of the United States of America, not only in the United States, but around the world. And private corporations are also funding this, where they won't even hire you if you don't believe in woke movement in America. And that's really why people are pushing back against it, because it's a very alien agenda in the United States.
But that woke movement is coming across the whole Europe. It seems like they don't want to control, because as if I understood you well, the motive is in controlling people. They don't want to control only Americans, they want to control the whole world.
I think what starts in America usually comes around the world, and that's exactly why I do believe you had these new type of leaders emerge in Italy, in Hungary, even here in Serbia, because the people fear what started in America, woke, will come to Europe, including not only woke in terms of values and traditions being replaced with this bizarre ideology, but also open borders, immigration that is rampant. This makes people afraid. In the United States, they've seen that the Democrats have opened the border with Mexico and who's coming in. In Europe, you see open borders basically de facto between Africa and Europe, the Middle East and Europe, and we've seen the destruction of European society as a result. And that's why I think in the United States and in Europe, they have finally said, we are done with this. We're done with open borders. We're done with woke. We want strong leaders. We want traditional leaders. And we want to bring our countries back to greatness. And that's why I believe, should Trump get reelected, you will see a very close relationship, hopefully, with leaders who have the same values as him.
But that woke culture and liberal politics is being filled up from time to time with some different elements. Sometimes it's transgender, sometimes it's sexual minorities of other kind. Sometimes it's COVID, then it's war against Ukraine. How come that people in America believe all that stuff?
I don't think they are believing it anymore. I think the social media has really changed how people perceive the world today. Before social media, you would listen to CNN or Fox News or a state channel, and that's where your information would be, and you had no alternative to question it. Now, social media and alternative information has woken up so many people that I don't even think that the government can control them. And that's, I think, why Donald Trump's popularity is continuing even when certain channels are calling him a criminal, because people are doing their own research and they're looking to what their interests are more than what the media tells them.
But I saw some public polls, public opinions that stated the less and less support for Ukrainian war and for funding, American funding of the Ukrainian war. Why is then Biden still sending Zelensky weapons? Why is he funding that war still?
Inflation is up in the United States. People are going hungry. There's homelessness. There's an open border.
Sorry to interrupt you, but people here don't believe that.
Oh, they should believe it because these are facts of what's happening in the United States. Ever since Biden has become president, he's increased spending in the United States that has resulted in tremendous inflation. Petroleum prices have gone almost double of what they were under President Trump. Jobs are being once again shipped around the world. And when you add the domestic situation with now Biden sending 200 billion, not million, tax dollars to Ukraine to fight a war, a proxy war with Russia, which most Americans don't even know where Ukraine is on the map. This is why most Americans now say, America first. We're tired of funding endless wars, and it's the message that Donald Trump has said since 2015 and even before when he was a private citizen. And I think that's why the American people have had enough, because they have finally an alternative to what the globalists and the deep states and the puppets like Biden and others have tried to do to America.
But still, I didn't get my answer. Why is he funding the war? Because someone is telling him, you have to give money to Zelensky and fight this war. And what is the purpose? To ruin Russia, to destroy Russia? What is the point?
Well, let's just look at facts.
Because it's obvious he's not winning that war. I mean, Ukrainians and Americans.
Biden's own defense secretary, Lloyd Austin, has said that the objective is to destroy the Russian military no matter the cost to Ukraine. This is the defense secretary of the United States, not what I'm saying. So clearly that the reason that they're sending this money is not to preserve democracy in Ukraine, because Ukraine is not a democracy. You cannot be a democracy if you basically suppress the Orthodox Church, which he has in Ukraine, if you control the opposition, if you control all of the media, and that you're at war with your own people in the East. And that's really what has set the situation in Ukraine. Now, what Biden is doing is trying to create a new proxy war with Ukraine and Russia so that Russia is destabilized. But the only thing that's happened as a result is that Russia has become closer to China. And for me, and I've said this in Russia's newspapers in 2016, and I say it today, the most dangerous alliance for the United States is not Russia alone or Iran, it's Russia and China. And the war in Ukraine has brought them together.
Russia and China together.
Together,
That's still they did it. But how is it going to end? What do you think? Is Putin going to lose this war? Or what do you see happening in next few months?
I gave an interview to one of Italy's largest newspapers right when the war started, called Il Riformista. And exactly what I said over 2 years ago, before the war started, it looks like it's going to happen now. And that is that Russia will de facto control the east of Ukraine, Crimea, the west, including Kyiv, will be some sort of NATO guarantor state where Poland has a lot of influence. And there will be an autonomous zone in Ukraine where maybe, if Ukraine is lucky, they will control Odessa and allow the export of goods and their way to the international community. But this could have all been prevented if peace was agreed to last year, when Putin offered a peace agreement for basically the East and Crimea, which is de facto. This is the situation. Zelensky, because of Boris Johnson and Biden, decided not to sign it. Now there have been thousands of more deaths, billions of new dollars spent that America does not need to spend, and it's going to result in basically Ukraine never being a sovereign country again in a practical sense.
Do you think that is possible, the direct war between America and Russia? Tucker Carlson, I think, said something like that, something similar.
Certainly, if the war continues to go against Ukraine, as it is in the war against Russia now, certainly things can happen. And that's why the situation is so unstable, because Biden and the administration has put not only billions of dollars in this war against Russia and Ukraine, but also there are US military now in Ukraine, there are British soldiers in Ukraine, there are soldiers of NATO in Ukraine, and the war continues to get closer to NATO's borders, including Poland. And you see the situation in Belarus. Things are becoming very unstable because peace is not the objective here. I believe escalating the war is the objective for Biden, and it certainly makes sense because there's an election in America, and this is a common tactic of presidents when they're weak domestically, is to create a chaos abroad to get votes and support at home.
Yes, we remember that from Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky case. We got the bad cards in that part. We got bombed because of that. But when you say escalation of the war, do you think that even nuclear war is possible, or somebody in that deep state are still sane enough not to make the nuclear war? Because even they are not going to survive it.
Russia and the United States are the two largest nuclear powers in the world. Of course, if this becomes a hot war and American soldiers get directly involved and are fighting Russian soldiers, which at this pace it's likely that will happen. We see it happening potentially in Syria, where there are Russian and American troops now in a destabilized situation, in Ukraine, and Zelensky himself has said that this is likely going to a nuclear conflict if it continues. So I hope and I pray to God that it does not go to that level, but as this continues, it looks like that could be an option if one side loses and one side wins.
There are some opinions saying that actually the main objective of United States is China, is not Russia. Do you think that US is going to go in war with China, or just going to try to restrain it as it does now?
If the US wanted to go to war with China now, they made the worst mistake possible by actually emboldening China, by working closer now with Russia, where Russia has really become almost a junior partner to China based on the economic devastation of sanctions on Russia and bilateral relationship which has grown because Russia has no alternatives. We see this also in BRIC countries in Africa. We see China taking a lead in terms of being a leader now of an alternative reserve currency in the world. This is really the biggest issue facing the United States. It's not Russia, but they've decided to focus on Russia while allowing China to continue to grow, become stronger economically and militarily. So I don't think the United States can afford a battle with China based on the economic situation at home and how unstable the world is and how powerful China has become and the support it has around the world, including in Europe, not just in Africa or Latin America. There are many European countries that have tremendous investment agreements with China. So I don't think it's going to happen even over Taiwan. And I think that's why Russia, unfortunately, has become the focus.
You have mentioned the BRIC summit. Now that was a formalization of some processes going on for quite a few years now. And it seems that US has lost a lot of its allies in the Middle East, especially. You lost Saudi Arabia, it's obvious now. You lost the Emirates. Why did that happen?
There's no respect for Biden. And I mean, let's look at how the world has changed only in over 3 years. Trump made the Abraham Accords, where Israel has signed peace agreements for the first time in history with numerous Arab countries. Iran, on the other hand, was completely weakened, defanged, and were not exporting the type of terrorism that they've been doing because they feared a retaliation of the Trump administration. African countries were stable. The relationship Trump had with both Xi Jinping in China and Putin prevented this growing emboldenment of BRICS alternative currencies, and the weakening of even the United States at the United Nations and the United Nations Security Council. So it really comes to having faith and trust in the President of the United States. These foreign governments do not have it, and they're waiting for America to become a leader once again. Without an American leadership, this is the result.
I think that Americans don't even trust their president nowadays. They don't even trust they're not buying the story that actually Biden is making the decisions. When you catch him on camera shaking hands with the empty air, doesn't know where he is at the moment. Who is making the shots in the White House among the staff, actually? Who is in charge?
What they are theorizing is that Obama and his people are actually running the Biden White House, and it's absolutely clear. You could see, whether you're in politics or you're a simple citizen, that Biden is not running the White House. He's cognitively impaired. He's not all there. He has many issues health-wise, and unfortunately, it shows you that in the United States, it really is the permanent bureaucracy that runs the country, because Biden certainly is not. And
that's not democracy, I must tell you.
It's not. And why Trump was a threat is because he wanted to take control away from the permanent bureaucracy, and they didn't want that to happen.
Let's go back to your case. You mentioned Trump, and in your country, some kind of a political celebrity. You even went to jail for 14 days. How did that happen? You were charged of what? Of being basically a Russian spy.
They wanted to tell people that I was a Russian spy, that other people were Russian spies with Trump, even though I've never been to Russia in my life, so you could understand the disinformation and the propaganda that they were doing. And what happened was, my case is very simple. It was a Western intelligence operation by the MI6, the Australian government, and even the FBI to fabricate a situation around me that made me seem like I was involved with Russia when I never was. And then I was charged with lying and all these bizarre situations. And yeah, I did have to go to jail.
How was that?
For me, it wasn't threatening, because even the people in the jail knew that the situation was corrupt, and they applauded like this, just like they did to Rudy Giuliani now and Donald Trump, who went to jail. And
was your mugshot as good as Trump's, or?
Unfortunately not. I wasn't as strong as he was, but Donald Trump knew that the American people are watching, and he showed fearlessness, strength, and in that picture, I believe, he told them, I'm coming for you, and I'm not scared of you. So I think there's another thing we have in common is we all have mugshots, but it's made the American people love us even more.
But the main guy was a strange guy, actually, in that story. Some guy, Joseph Mifsud, right?
That's right.
Who actually disappeared after the whole story of setting you up for some kind of anti-Hillary information. Do you have any idea where is he now? Is he a spy? Who was that guy, actually?
So this is a very good question. I wrote a book on this. It's not in Serbian, but it's, if any English, it's called Deep State Target, as you mentioned. And I cover who this person is, how I met him. This individual is who started the entire investigation. And I met with him.
The investigation against Trump?
Against Trump. I didn't meet him in Moscow. I didn't meet him in Tehran. I didn't meet him in let's say, a problematic country for the United States. I met him in Rome. And then I had meetings with him in London.
And he was, well, of what nationality?
He was Maltese, but he was
okay.
connected to both Italian intelligence services and British intelligence services. And he is such a mysterious person that after 3 different investigations, Bob Mueller, Horowitz investigation, and the John Durham investigation, which just ended 2 months ago, they still did not tell the people who he really was. And for that to happen...
And you met him as what? How did he introduce yourself to him? Him to you, sorry.
He introduced himself as somebody who was a director at this university in Rome called Link Campus, which trains CIA, FBI, I didn't know at the time. And I introduced myself as an advisor to Trump, and I said this person might be a connected European.
And he told you what?
He told me that the Russians have Hillary Clinton's emails. Now, when he told me this information, this was in the media. It was speculated at the media, so I did nothing with this information. I didn't care. But what he wanted to do in the operation is to tell me this and hope I told Trump.
And did you?
No. And if I told Trump, then they would have said Trump is part of a Russia conspiracy. So that was really the operation. It failed. And because it failed, they became very desperate. The Mueller investigation failed. He's a disgraced person in America. Trump actually elevated himself, and then they impeached him after that. So you could understand that this war against Trump was not going to begin and end with me or Bob Mueller. It was going to continue and continue, and the arrest is just the conclusion of what they started.
So actually, Russians are not the one that tried to interfere the American elections. It was MI6, right?
Let's look. These are facts again. In 2016, you had MI6, Christopher Steele, MI6 agent, making a dossier against Trump to get a warrant to spy against him. You had various intelligence operatives from Australia, Italy, the UK meeting with me, recording me, spying on me, and Trump. In 2020, the last election, the CIA suppressed the story of Hunter Biden's laptop being real. This is election interference of the CIA, the FBI, and allied intelligence that is now evident for the world to see. So whether Russia interfered or not, I have no idea, and no one knows because I've never met with a Russian official, and I had no plans to meet with Russian officials. But who I did meet with were British, Australians, Italians, FBI, these individuals, and that's another reason the American people are so tired of this deep state.
About deep state, I want to ask you, it's almost like a favorite expression here in people who talk about politics, but we still don't know who is the deep state. You know, it's very vague when you say it's a military complex. Do they have a name? Do they have a face? Who are those people?
The deep state are basically the intelligence agencies.
Is Bill Gates, for example, a deep state or not? And Zuckerberg?
Whoever is controlled by the intelligence agencies or is being paid by the intelligence agencies for an agenda is part of the deep state by extension. But what the deep state is that we faced was this permanent bureaucracy that, one, did not want to lose its own power, and two, did not want an individual like Trump or advisors that were not part of them to shake up economic policy at home, around the world, and foreign relations, because they believe that they should be telling the world how America should behave. The unelected should tell America how to govern the world, not the elected president. And as I mentioned earlier, Biden is not controlling America. He's demented. He can't even speak a sentence. So clearly, the deep state is running his operation. And that's really the easiest way I could explain it.
Is there any chance that Trump is going to win these elections?
I believe 100% that Trump will be the next president of the United States of America.
What will happen then in the world?
Trump has been actually very vocal about what he wants to do. He wants to end the war in Ukraine immediately. He wants to be tough on China. He wants to bring stability to the Middle East once again. He wants American allies to respect America. And he wants to bring back jobs once again to America and to lower prices and to allow America to be an energy exporter. And most importantly, to fight woke and to bring traditional values back to America. This is what he has openly discussed. He's been talking about this from the beginning. And should he get reelected, I think we will likely see the same policies of his first term, just without the instability of having all of these distractions like Mueller or impeachments or COVID. And I think it'll bring...
It was very much used against him.
Of course. And I think we'll see prosperity around the world with Trump in 2024.
What will happen to Serbia?
This is a very good question as well. Trump's point man, as the people know, Rick Grenell, did a great job. We saw tremendous improvements in opening up Serbia to the American business community, the foreign policy community, even relations with Kosovo began to thaw. And this is something that went completely against the traditional foreign policy of the United States. which, as you know, there was a war in the 90s in which NATO was the aggressor here. We saw the overt support for Albania and Kosovo by former administrations. What was interesting about Trump is he decided to look at Serbia through a fresh perspective. As a country with a thriving economy, with a major Serbian-American population in the United States, which are quite successful, and to say, how do we change this? How do we stabilize the Balkans by using Serbia instead of destabilizing the Balkans using Serbia? And I think that's why we saw the changes we have seen, and most importantly, why I think now there's new interest in the Balkans by the European Union, China, and the United States, and even Turkey, because of this new development strategy by Trump.
What brings you to Serbia?
So I was born and raised in Chicago. I grew up with many Serbian-American friends. I'm a Greek-American. I always felt very traditionally close to the Serbian community myself. And my wife and I, she's Italian, we have been vacationing in Europe, and we said, let's make an opportunity to go visit Belgrade, which I've heard so many beautiful things about, and to see the wonderful culture in the city here, and we love it, and we've had a wonderful time so far.
Will you try to make some political connections here or not?
I'm always very happy to learn from people, from experts. I think it's very important, especially during an election year. And as somebody, I work on television in the United States, and I have, I guess, a platform on social media. And it's a region that I'm interested in. I would like to, of course, learn more, and meeting people is always something that is in my interest, and I think in the interest of others too.
I hope you're going to go back to America with nice words for Serbs. You're still in contact with Richard Grenell, right?
Yes.
You're still involved politically with him.
Yeah, Richard Grenell and I, we actually work on the same television channel in the United States on Newsmax. So I know that he's still very active as well. I know he's traveled quite frequently to the region here within the last month or so. And it'll be good to see what he says about what he sees, and how I see the situation myself being here for the first time.
He's going to be in the Trump's team or not?
That I don't know. I think there's still over a year left before the election, so many things can change, but right now I think the priority is just making sure that Trump survives this legal attack against him, and then the rest I think will all fall into place properly.
Will you be a member of his team?
I'm the same situation, I think, as others. I think right now the focus is just hoping that he gets elected, and I think Trump knows who supports him from day one and who doesn't, and he's a smart person. He'll put together the right team, I think.
Thank you very much for this interview, and it was nice having you here.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.